Let's do it here. Hi, everybody. I'm here with Racine Brown, who is an applied anthropologist and also a military veteran. He served time in the Marine Corps as an officer deployed overseas. He's also a medical anthropologist with extensive experience in research and user experience and all of those good things. Welcome, Racine.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you were able to take the time to have a short chat with us today. As you know, we're putting together a series of events called Design the Future, and I was really eager to get your perspective on what big problems you think we need to solve in the world. You and I have had a number of conversations about leadership. I'm a veteran as well. So we've had conversations about military style leadership and standards of quality and ways of building teams and leading teams. And I wondered if you could just spend a couple of minutes talking about your experience in the military and what lessons and best practices do you think we could derive from that experience?
Well, I mean, that's kind of hard to sum up in a few words, but I think the way top takeaway, the best lesson I learned in the Marine Corps, or at least the way I succeeded to the extent that I did, was finding some balance between, authentic self and care for others and following the rules and fitting in parameters enough to keep membership in the organization. I mean, and what I mean by that isn't official membership, but cultural membership. I was never, I'm not a naturally super fastidious person. I'm more fastidious than I was 25 years ago. In some ways I didn't fit the textbook picture of an officer of Marines. And I struggled at officer candidate school until I found a way to problem solve and do the core things that needed to be done. At first I was there, I tried to do everything. I got about an hour's sleep a night and I was failing miserably. And then, funny story, we have at officer candidate school, there are many silly things they make you do. It's kind of like boot camp in some ways not so much. But, I can't remember the ditty. But at the end of the day, we all had to lay down at the position of attention in our racks. They weren't beds, they were racks. And shout one heart, one mind, hard, sharp, and vision, all this stuff. And someone said I fell asleep at the position of attention. And from then on, that was an inflection point. From then on, I was never a water walker or an ideal candidate. But I, started to make it enough because I got the core things that need to be done that day enough. Concentrating on the goal of graduating and getting commissions. Like, okay, what do I absolutely need to get done today to further that goal? And then the rest of the stuff, priority, really should do. This would be nice to do. And it involved a lot of juggling, but, I learned the hard way that the whole purpose of OCS is to stress people out, is to give you too much to do and see what you do with it. See if you can prioritize.
While you're sleep deprived.
Yes. And when I got, through all the schooling, which there were 2 more iterations after that, the basic school for Marine officers and infantry officer course, each of which presented their own challenges. Fortunately, I didn't get yelled at quite as much as OCS. But, when I got out to the fleet, I realized that very quickly that just having shiny stuff on my collar was not leadership. Especially, the gold bars, it's almost, even though you're a commissioned officer, people call you sir.
And everyone salutes you now.
Of junior, ness, it's almost more of a joke than anything else. So the way to show leadership is, I never, said the brilliant things, but I set the example of doing the best that I could at whatever I was doing. I clearly laid out expectations and I met the expectations I set for others the best I could. The Marine Corps, for another thing they do is, it's not a very touchy-feely organization as one might imagine. However, in its own odd way, it really is about caring for the troops. And I think at that time, all the services had some idea about that, but the Marine Corps did a little bit more. One example, out in the field, if they're serving vat chow, which is gloriously disgusting, but if you, serving a centralized meal versus MREs, the most junior Marines eat first. The people who are actually the trigger pullers out there on the line, they eat first. And then, if you're the highest ranking person in the unit, with maybe some exception that someone's late or whatever, you eat last. So, if they run out of something, the person most likely to go without is the leader of the group. And that, I learned you can't lead people effectively if you don't authentically care about them and it doesn't show. You don't have to be warm and cuddly, but if you're not seen looking to people's welfare, and people can spot a fake on that. If you're not seen looking to people's welfare, balancing what you expect them to do with, developing them as people, as Marines, or in whatever career field you happen to be talking about, that's another thing the Marine Corps really puts a premium on is, you're not, if you have a private first class or a lance corporal, they're expected to do certain jobs. They have a certain not super high status in the Marine Corps, but you're not training them to be the permanent best lance corporal. They have their ordinary duties, drudge work that nobody likes, but at the same time, if you're their sergeant, the squad leader, platoon sergeant, platoon leader, you have a responsibility to make sure they're developing to take on the next level of responsibilities, corporal, sergeant, etc. Same thing with officers. My senior officers, kept tabs on us to make sure we were learning not only the official learnings we had to do for course, following coursework for next ranks, but evaluating us that we were learning what we needed to do as platoon leaders or staff officers.
And promoting people. The thing about the military that I think is a bit different from how we run normal organizations is that there's a track for promotion. They want to promote you.
Yes.
And, those promotions are yours to lose. And as long as you are doing the do, right, which we all learn to do. I mean, the thing I find really interesting about the military is how good they are at training people and how good they are at aligning people around common values and a common mission. And that's important because the military, are first responders in crises, right?
Oh, sure.
And what we learn how to do is to mobilize incredibly well. And we also learn how to respect leadership, but also how to respect each other. And it's been over 30 years since I was in the Army and not for very long because I had a knee injury and I got out. But these I think are powerful lessons. What happened during World War II, for instance, when we mobilized in mass to deal with the threats of Nazis in Europe and Pearl Harbor and everything that happened was really extraordinary. And it wasn't just military service members that came together in that war effort. It was normal civilians. It was women who went and worked in factories while men went overseas. And
everyone dealt with ration books, no matter their age and
the rationing and
status.
everything, right? And it's really extraordinary what we can do when we come together. And I think there's a lot we can learn from military best practices. Now, I'm a pacifist and I was a linguist in the military, but I do think that there's a lot to be learned in terms of how the military structures itself, how it teaches its members to lead, how it teaches its members to come together quickly. There's a chain of command and that works really well in a lot of cases. So yeah, there's so much we can learn.
And I think another thing is a really surprising thing about the Marine Corps is the degree of flexibility it has. I mean, in some ways, shining your shoes or your boots, uniform standards, it's very persnickety, much more so, in terms of customs and courtesies. Uh, the little details is much more persnickety than most of the other services. It's a part I struggle with, but in terms of, tactics, I mean, there are certain parameters, but the Marine Corps, despite countervailing pressures of rank and, some people's tendency to micromanage as an organization, the mantra is we decentralize leadership and push decision making down to the lowest level that makes sense.
That's so
there's
smart.
an intent, there's a plan, but the idea is if you're a company commander, platoon leader, the higher intent very well, because you might come to a point where your mission no longer makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the mission, it's mission accomplishment is first thing, troop welfare second, or, as we say, mission accomplishment first, troop welfare always. But there's, even with mission accomplishment, that mission is to serve a higher goal. Like for instance, you could have a mission to take a hill, but if the enemy troops you want to destroy are no longer on that hill, well, just take the hill, follow on, go to the other hill where they actually are.
Well, they recognize that the people on the front lines have more strategic, tactical information than the leaders do, right? And that's the same metaphor in the world. I mean, it's the same metaphor at the grocery store, right? So maybe the managers have said, right, do X, Y, or Z, but if the conditions in the store at that time or something different, people need to be prepared to take a leadership role. And what we're also trained to do, I think, is to spring into action in a crisis, even if that happens as civilians. I've done that numerous times in my life over the years, where I've had to deal with some sort of medical emergency that happens in my presence, or some sort of criminal activity that happens in my presence. And we're taught to spring into action, because we're effectively first responders. So we only have a couple more minutes, but I wondered, could you just give us your thoughts on what we need to do to design the future effectively, just in a couple of minutes?
Well, I mean, I think finding ways to look for the common ground is a start. I mean, there are a lot of problems. I think, climate change, some people call it climate emergency. I think we need to find commonality, and the vast majority of people need to find ways to look at the world as it is, with hope and with problem solving, mindset, take it one step at a time. But I think too many of us, are siloed into internet echo chambers, ideologies, etc., that we're so clamped on this narrow identity that, in effect, it equates to, the proverbial ostrich burying their head in the sand.
Right.
I think, a more equitable future of practical solutions to energy, to equitable sharing the fruits of an economy, just getting simplistic. I remember. I'll finish with this. I'm mildly obsessed with the show The Americans.
Okay. I don't think I've seen it.
It is, the premise is, these two super deep cover Soviet agents are living, and this is Dos Ex Machina, have such, learned English so well, they don't have Russian accents. They're, sleeper cell in, Northern Virginia.
I think I've seen the trailer. Yeah.
I love the show. I think it's a great show because it makes, I'm a patriotic person, and it makes KGB agents seem sympathetic. But a quote I remember is the wife, it's a husband-wife team, and the wife is trying to kind of turn their daughter toward the Soviet Union because, the daughter finds out who they really are. And she says, the Soviet Union has their problems, but at least we all think we know we're in this together. Now, of course, if you read Solzhenitsyn, the Soviet Union really did have its problems. But getting to the idea that, this individual self-efficacy, determination, But if we're gonna succeed, we all got to be in this together at some level.
I love this notion of common ground and common values. Whoops, that was a cat. Well, you know, they do what they want to do. Because I think you're absolutely right. You know, as anthropologists, we understand that humans are more alike than they are different, right? We love the same, we cry the same, we hurt the same, we care about our families and children the same.
Russians also listen to cheesy music. I've worked
There's
with enough
some
to know.
great things about Russia and the Soviet dream.
I've never met a Russian I don't like. I mean, I think
Yeah,
geopolitically,
yeah.
it's a challenge. You know, their president might not be the best human being ever.
But we can love a nation's people while we don't love their government. And the problem with the Russian government is, you know, Vladimir Putin is former KGB. He wants his Soviet Union back, and this time he wants it on a grand worldwide scale. And they're willing to commit human rights atrocities in order to achieve their goal. And that is not a value we need to align on. We need to align on values that are around
in any country for any ideology.
Right, ending war, ending poverty, you know, supporting people in terms of education and healthcare and all of the stuff that they need, you know, because when we nurture people's potential, they produce better in society and they're happier. So why wouldn't we do that? You know, that's what makes sense, right? This brutal oppression of people in order to get stuff done doesn't work. And the reason why people used to talk about the Soviet Union in certain ways in terms of their products and the quality level, you know, it's about their priorities. You know, when you spend all your money on war, right?
Yeah.
You don't have any money left to spend on the stuff that actually makes society better. Yeah, which is really sad. Well, thank you, Racine, so much for your time. I really appreciate your perspective. And I hope we see you next week at the event on Wednesday, September 9th, if you can make it. I think it's going to be a really, really great convening of a whole bunch of great minds to talk about, you know, similar topics. So thank you so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.